Steeler fans everywhere, welcome once again to the show that lets you ask the questions. We ask the questions too, and we answer it all together. Hi, my friends from behind the steel curtain. My name is Bryan Anthony Davis. Along with me is also my good friend from behindthesteelcurtain.com, actually more of a veteran than I am, Tony Defeo. Tony, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, Brian. I mentioned last week how great it was weather-wise, but it's the complete opposite this week. It's like mid-March instead of mid-May.
I think you jinxed it for us.
I'm cold, yeah.
I'm freezing, and my wife is hot all the time now. She's just always hot. So I came up, like the windows were wide open. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, like, I'm going to bed in a parka and at night. So she's always really hot now, and she was never like that before. I mean, that's what happens when the 40s kick in. But now I'm never cold, and now I'm freezing all the time. So, I had shorts on today, and I walked up, and I realized that I had shorts for my shower, and then I realized that the windows were all open. And she said, "Why do you have shorts on?" I'm like, "Yeah, because I didn't think you would have every window open in the house." And Maryland is really cold right now. I started power washing last weekend. My hose broke, so I went and got the hose finished. I couldn't go out because I don't want to get wet in cold weather.
No, it is brutal. At least it feels that way anyway.
So
for the time of year.
Tony, if you do not know, I know you know the answer to this question. If you all don't know, Tony, we've been teasing this for a long time. We've been calling for it. You, in our live chat, has been calling for it. Tony has his own show now on the Behind the Steel Curtain network of podcasts. And on YouTube, it is on Saturdays. It's Brunch with Tony. And I don't know if you've heard the talk the other day, but Lance Williams, also of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, big shout out to Sir Lancelot, thinks that you should combine it, not just Steelers, but since it's called Brunch with Tony, you should be eating a different culinary delight every single Saturday. So,
well, let's see. About a year ago at this time, I weighed 175. Now I'm happy if I'm below 190 most weeks. So I don't know if that's such a good idea for me, but if that's what my people want, then that's what I'll give them. Maybe we'll see. We'll see how the show progresses.
It's just Lance asking. So if the live chat asks, then there you go. But speaking of Lance Williams, you can hear Lance Williams on Friday nights. Yeah, I said it. Also on Wednesdays with Jeff Hartman on The Standard is the Standard. The other shows, you have a show every single day. I missed mentioning Lance with Jeff also on Sundays with the Homer and Hater show. And I had an opportunity to be on the Homer and Hater show yesterday. Lance was off yesterday, and so I subbed in for him. Had a great time on that show with Jeff Hartman. Don't forget the brother Schofield, Dave with his big bro Sco. I had an opportunity to be on that show too last week as well. So I'm like the fill-in guy. I'm like Dean Martin from the 1970s. Every time that Johnny Carson needed a guest, it seemed like Dean Martin was always on the show. But the Stat Geek's a great show too.
Oh, I listen to that every now and then on Tuesdays, and I listened to you guys yesterday. You guys did a good job. And if you could be today, Dean Martin, if anything, I think that's not bad.
How cool was Dean Martin?
The coolest ever.
And Robert Sasovitz says it was called the Homer and Homer show yesterday because I'm more of a Homer, and Lance thinks with initials bad that I should be more of a heel. And Tony and I always joke. I used to be the Ric Flair of this network, and Tony was my Arn Anderson. I don't know if I'm still holding up to that, but we'll see. We'll see. But it's really nice to see on the live chat a lot of people mentioning really how well you're finishing strong with your podcast and how good it is. So when you do that first live podcast, we were solo podcast. That's definitely a big deal because you feel like you're running a marathon because you're talking the entire time and you can't hand it off. But I thought you keep that up. Here's the big topic today, Tony. We just talked about the crown of podcasting and taking the crown though for the Steelers. Steelers have not taken the AFC North crown in a while. It's been, when was it? 2017 was the last time they took the title. Now, the last 2 years, the Baltimore Ravens have been the kings of the AFC North, and that just hurts. That hurts me to even have to say. But here's the thing. Nothing is certain when you look at the teams in this AFC North, because any one of it could win it. Now, we don't expect the Cincinnati Bengals to, take the crown this year. The Cleveland Browns have been building that roster. If they could be on green grass as good as they have been on paper, Tony, they could probably challenge for it. But Jeff Hartman brought this up to me. Nobody has ever won that division, the AFC North, since its inception. And its inception, as you remember, was 2002, I believe.
Right.
If not 2003, I think it was 2002.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as that goes, there has never been a three-peat. The Steelers have won it twice in a row before. It seems like there was a time when they kept on winning it year after year after year, but that division's so strong, you have very good teams going in there as a wild card. And you've seen the Steelers and the Ravens win. It wasn't really when they won as a wild card. They were not in the. It was not the AFC North at the time when the Ravens won their first Super Bowl. But teams have won the Super Bowl as a wild card contender too. But there's something about having that T-shirt that says "We run the North." Can the Steelers get back to that, Tony?
Yeah, I mean, like we said before, it's all about Big Ben. I mean, if Big Ben can come back and be close to his old self, then he's the difference maker in this division. I think he's the most important player. His fate is the most important aspect of 2020 for the AFC North, because I think if he comes back strong, then you already have a great defense. You saw how well the defense played last year. I think it's the best in the NFL, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a Steeler fan. And he's gonna make the skill position players that much better. He's gonna make the offensive line that much better, and then he's gonna make the Steelers a formidable foe for the other AFC North teams. So yeah, I think they can, because it's like any other division in the NFL other than the AFC East. It's hard to win 2, 3, 4 titles in a row. So yeah, I think they could definitely. It's going to be a dogfight. No, there's no question about it.
So in 2020, the Steelers right now, it seems like all the experts are definitely putting them in the playoffs, but as a wild card team, and everybody on paper is saying that it's going to be the Baltimore Ravens. Now, when you bring up the Baltimore Ravens and the draft that they had, and coming off of a fantastic 13-3 season, and with only one loss down that stretch, I believe it was just one loss down that stretch, if I'm not mistaken. But when you bring them up, or were they 14-2 last year? Tony, am I mixing up my numbers here? Did they lose down the stretch?
I believe they were 13-3, but I don't think they were 14-2. But they did have the number 1 seed, so very well could have been 14-2. But I think they lost three times last year. I think they lost to the.
I'm pretty sure they were
the Browns.
And they lost to the Chiefs early on. They lost those games early on. So I believe they were 13-3 as well. But now Dem XN Players says 14-2. So yeah, and so does Logan DiLorenzo. Okay. So yeah, they started off 2-2, and then they went crazy with that 12-game winning streak and lost their first game in the playoffs. So there you go. I was kind of getting that all mixed up. That's a fantastic season for the Ravens. 14-2 is, in this day and age, that's what 15-1 was way back when the 49ers were doing it and the Steelers were the only team to beat them back in 1984 and teams like that. So, that's a monumental achievement. But, of course, you've got to be able to convert in the playoffs. So, as far as everything goes, you look at his record in the playoffs. Lamar Jackson not that great in the playoffs. He's 0-2 in the playoffs. But in the regular season, he's pretty solid. He has an amazing record so far just to start off his career. Just a fantastic record like last year. Gosh, winning 14 games last year. Well, he won 13 games because Robert Griffin the third started the final game against the Steelers. So here's the thing. Everybody wants to put the crown on them to win now, to win again in 2020, actually to go farther than they did this year. Are you buying it? Because for me, I don't think that I think they got to play the games. And I think the Steelers are a lot better than they were last year. And I'm going to put that out to everybody else too.
Yeah, I mean, it's all going to come down to, I talked about Big Ben a few minutes ago and how important he is to the Steelers. Well, Lamar Jackson's development as a all-around quarterback is important to the Ravens because, I mean, we saw what happened to him the last 2 years in the playoffs. The defenses he went up against, they figured out a way to shut his strengths down. So he's going to have to evolve. He's a young quarterback. He's coming into his third year, and he's going to have to evolve as a passer, as an all-around football player in order for him to get to the next level and take the Ravens to the next level. And teams aren't just going to wait till the postseason to catch up to him. Now he's going to, how the NFL is. Defenses are going to catch up to him in the regular season and make him a one-dimensional quarterback, and it's not going to. He's not going to be the same player that he was if he doesn't again evolve as a player. So, am I buying it? Again, it all depends on Lamar Jackson. I think it's going to, again, I think it's going to be a closer race than people think, because I think for whatever reason, people like to discount Big Ben. We know this. It's been going on forever. He doesn't have a great reputation nationally, but we all know what kind of player he is. And if he comes back and is the player that he was before, then it's going to be, that race is going to be a dogfight. It's not etched in stone. The Steelers, for the Ravens, the Steelers are a really good football team with Ben, a healthy Ben.
Well, so you mentioned being back to being one-dimensional and teams figuring him out. This was his second season. It wasn't his second full season, but he did play quite a bit in his rookie year, and he actually played quite a bit. He got to see the field even when Joe Flacco was quarterback. I look at him as a Michael Vick type of player, where it took an injury to knock Michael Vick down. Michael Vick really did not, he did, his skills didn't wane. His body right. Fell apart, and then he had his legal problems as well. I kind of think Lamar Jackson is that kind of guy that he might be upper echelon right away. I mean, you can't forget the fact that not only was he a Heisman Trophy winner, but he was the kind of Heisman Trophy winner that was able to maintain it and actually get better at the next level. So Lance is right now in the live chat saying that Lamar Jackson is better than Ben at this moment.
Well, I mean, he's the reigning MVP of the league. So, I mean, yeah, but again, if he can't, he has to evolve. Like Michael Vick was he was a much better passer, earlier in his career than Lamar Jackson is right now. I mean, that's the thing. He can't keep. I know we've been saying this since his rookie year. Oh, he can't keep doing that, running the ball and being that kind of quarterback. But eventually, it's just too good of a league to make it that way, unless you improve and become great in all facets of the game. That's just how I feel about it.
Well, one thing that the Steelers really did not have going for them was the quarterback play, and we all know, because that happened after week 2 when Ben Roethlisberger went down. The quarterback play wasn't amazing the first 2 weeks of the season, but he was already hurt. This was an injury that just got aggravated in week 2. That elbow just was not right. Ben right now claims that he is throwing better than he has in a long, long time. He's also there's a lot of people already saying that he's back, and they feel like he's back, but we haven't seen him. We can take their word for it. He's not going to have a mini camp. He is also not going to have he might have an abbreviated training camp. Now, we talked yesterday on the Homer and the Hater show. Jeff Hartman and I talked about the rookies having a disadvantage with having a virtual training camp. How much of a disadvantage is this going to be for Ben Roethlisberger not having a mini camp and not being able to be in there like he would have been in past years? We're talking about him being a possible comeback player of the year, but is this COVID-19 situation going to hold him back a little bit?
Well, from a mental standpoint, no, because I mean he knows the offense. He's a 17-year veteran, but from a physical standpoint, yeah, I mean he's never missed this much time in his NFL career, and you know what they say, you can do all the conditioning you want, but there's nothing like game shape, right? There's nothing like that kind of shape that the conditioning. So it is going to be a problem. It could be a big problem for him if they don't have their off-season schedule that they've had in the past. So yeah, it could be a huge deal.
Now, here's another thing that we talked about yesterday, and we were talking more about the rookies, and we really weren't talking about Ben. But the more that I thought about it, this affects Ben so much more, and it also affects Ben for the fact that he does not have a chance to get a rapport with some of these players, because look, he really doesn't have a rapport right now with Deontay Johnson. He played maybe one game with him, maybe some practice, maybe a couple series with him, and then one game in the regular season, maybe 6 quarters, I guess you could say. So he really doesn't, and we've seen in the past where Ben needs to have a rapport with a player for a full preseason, a full camp. That happened with Vance McDonald way back his first year, because if you recall, Vance McDonald came in right before the 4th preseason game in 2017. So when he came in right around the same time as Joe Hayden did, but Joe Hayden did not have to get a rapport with a quarterback where your tight end did, and you really didn't reap the benefit of having Vance McDonald in there until towards the end of the season, where he really started to gel. So do you think that's a possibility, that he not being in there with James Washington all of last season? He's familiar with Juju. He's fairly familiar with James Washington, knows nothing about Chase Claypool, and hardly knows Deontay Johnson. Is that going to be tough for Ben?
Not as tough as I think the conditioning part of it, the getting back into football shape part, because he is a veteran, he is a future Hall of Famer. So I think from that standpoint, it's up to him to have that part, to get that part of his game down. Being the veteran that he is. So I don't think that's going to be as huge an issue as the other part. I look at how James Washington and Deontay Johnson, look at how they got used to Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges. So if they can get used to those guys, then Big Ben can certainly get used to them.
And I believe that they will. It's just something that we do have to think about, because a lot of people are crowning Ben the comeback player of the year, and there's, like Lance is saying in the live chat, what he's saying is, we're having there's so many questions around Ben right now, and the problem with Ben is we need to see him out there, and we're not. So that's one of the reasons I'm asking all of these questions. But I fully believe that I don't think that he was completely healthy when he had that 2018 season, when we had 5,000 yards, and when he did throw a lot of interceptions that year. But we don't feel that he had that he was having the season that he could have, because he was injured, and that really would have not happened last year because he was injured. He probably needed this surgery, but it's just how well can he come back from it? and we're not going to know until he has pads on and he's on the field.
Yeah, I mean, we saw how he struggled 2 years ago with the deep ball. He seemed to be off on so many of his throws, especially early in the year. He threw so many interceptions on deep throws. So I'm of the theory, maybe it's just wishful thinking on my part because I want him to be the Ben of 28 instead of maybe the Ben of 38. But I'm thinking that this elbow surgery for the remainder of his career could be a blessing in disguise as far as how he finishes out his career as a passer.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and take it to the live chat. A lot of people talking about Ben, how he needs to earn getting back in there. A lot of talk about Lamar Jackson not being the player that Ben is, Ben not being the player that Lamar Jackson is. I will preface that Lamar Jackson won the MVP, and there was no way that he wasn't going to be winning it. We've also talked about Ben Roethlisberger as well, and what he needs to do to come back strong. It looks like he needs time. Now, I talked about how a lot of people are saying that he's already the comeback player of the year, but now that has stopped. I've also heard that now Rob Gronkowski is definitely the comeback player of the year. And I know this is just a stupid award, as far as that goes. It's, you can say what it is the comeback player of the year is a great award, but when they give it to somebody that had retired or had been out for a suspension or something, I don't think that's right. I think it's somebody that had the challenge of being injured and had to come back. So do you think that they should consider a guy like Rob Gronkowski even for the award, or a guy like Ben? Go ahead.
No, I agree. I think the perfect example of a comeback player is Adrian Peterson in 2012, where I think he came within 9 yards of the single season rushing record 1 year after suffering an ACL injury, which could be the downfall of any running back. Just ask Gale Sayers. I mean, it was a different time, different medical technology or terminology. Medicine was different back then, but I think it should be a player who had an off year the year before, whether it be injury or just poor performance. Like John Stallworth, he was the comeback player of the year in '84, and he only played in 4 games in 1983 because of injury. That's what a comeback player of the year is, not somebody who comes back from retirement. Because I don't think that's what the spirit of the award.
I definitely agree with that now too. Please excuse all the noise in the background. Children will be grounded again after this show. But as far as everything else goes, you're looking at, let's get back to Lamar Jackson now. We talked about how great he is in the regular season, but if you look at the postseason, he's had 2 huge losses. And look, I will say this to you, Baltimore Raven fan, I'm going to say this to you. I will not let you brag on Lamar Jackson until after this year. And it has nothing to do with Lamar Jackson. It has everything to do with you, Baltimore Raven fan. And the reason being, last year at this time, you hated him. Most of you, 90% of you, hated him. And I will say that. And if you're one of the 10%, that's fine. I mean, I'll give you credit. But what happened last year, because of that one game, everyone was saying it was too early for him to be starting a playoff game. I don't agree with that. You go with a hot hand. But I live in Maryland, and I've seen a lot of Baltimore Raven fans that are quick to jump off somebody's bandwagon, and they jumped off of it. At 2-2, when that team was 2-2, they were off of his bandwagon. Then you get a 12-game winning streak, and you hate and you love him. He's the greatest thing, and you're like, we told you, and you didn't tell us nothing. Right. So, Tony, I hear that a lot because I'm in Maryland and I run into purple and black all the time. Do you notice that in Pittsburgh?
I don't notice a whole lot about that because we're more worried about Ben, I guess, in the general Pittsburgh area, but he's going to face those questions meeting Lamar Jackson until he performs in the playoffs. Because if you speaking of Ben, his first year he won 14 straight games as a rookie. He got into the playoffs against the Jets and he was pretty bad. He basically got lucky. They were lucky to win that game against the Jets. 2 missed field goals. They don't win that game. And then the New England AFC Championship game, he was awful again in that game. So if he would have turned around the very next year in that Bengals playoff game and played poorly and they lost, there would have been people questioning him like we're questioning Lamar Jackson. I mean, that's just how it is. You have to prove it in the postseason. Nobody's going to think you're elite until you do it on the big stage. And I like Lamar Jackson after watching him last year. I doubted him as a player, and he proved me wrong in the regular season. But you have to do it in the postseason. That's what the game's all about. That's what separates you from the pack. You have to do it. Patrick Mahomes did it last year. He did it in the postseason. That's why he's the face of the league now, because he proved it on the biggest stage. So that's what Lamar Jackson's going to have to do to get people to convince people that he's an elite quarterback.
You know what? I think I tell you what, I think he's absolutely incredible. And I know the Steelers did a pretty good job of shutting him down for the most part in that week 5 game. I believe it was week 5 when Mason got completely crushed. I thought, and that was a game that the Steelers really could have won had Juju Smith-Schuster not fumbled. Of course, there's a few games that they could have won if there wasn't a key fumble in last year's season. But what happened? It was just it was a snake bitten season all around when they were losing those games like that. Do you think that season for the Steelers, the way that they lost games that season that they could have won, the way that they lost a quarterback and were in the wild card hunt until right around 1:00 on the last day of the season, do you think that's going to really drive this team? Now, I've heard in the past, and last week I heard from the live chat when we were talking about Ben Roethlisberger being motivated this year. They're saying they're professional athletes. They should not be motivated. That's what the live chat was saying. But right. Do you think that there's going to be just extra motivation to just prove it? Prove that they can beat this guy.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, that's what every division in the NFL is like that. I always make fun of the AFC East, but I have my reasons because they basically laid down for the Patriots for 2 decades, it seems. Everybody in football, divisional football, they want to beat the team that's on top. And right now the Ravens are on top for 2 years in a row. But the Steelers are their longtime rivals, and they did a pretty good job last year. You mentioned, a few games go the other way, especially that one on October 6th at Heinz Field against the Ravens that they lost in overtime. That game goes another way. That 49ers game goes another way. The Bills game goes another way. You're talking about an 11-5 football team. Now, I realize they won a lot of games they could have lost. I mean, Adam Vinatieri missed that field goal in the Colts game at the end of regulation. They probably would have lost that game. So these things have a tendency to even out. But I think what it proves is the Steelers, despite having a compromised offense due to the quarterback situation, they were good enough to remain in the hunt until the end of the year. So why shouldn't it, having their best player come back, motivate the entire team to play even better this year and to take things to another level? And that's contending for the division, contending for the conference, and contending for the Lombardi.
Dave Schofield throws in the bad roughing penalty on Ola hurt worse too. So yeah, that was horrendous. That was a terrible call, and that's one of those things that I think I forgot. Sean American Patriot says Lamar Jackson is the man who wants Mr. 3rd and 5th on his team. God, please let that happen. AB 84 to the birds, please. Really, you know what? I actually fear that. I fear AB to the Ravens because I don't think that, with the exception of him legally not being able to play, I don't think that he would torpedo that team as much as a lot of people do. Do you think he would?
I think the Ravens, as much as I hate to say this, I think they're a well-run organization. They have a good coach, a good front office, and I don't think they would put up with it. So if he did go there and he did act like his old AB self, it would be like with the Patriots last year. He would be gone within a couple of weeks. But
but he wasn't his typical AB self with the Patriots. He never really had a chance to torpedo that team. I'm not loving the guy. I'm just saying that, and I'm not sticking up for him, but really the stuff that was going on outside with the allegations and the things that allegedly he had done, and I have to say allegedly because I don't know. But you know what? I also think that a lot of the reasons that those things came out, was his behavior leaving Oakland after just doing it to Pittsburgh. I actually think that. We have a question here, and it's from North Top. Have you guys heard about the Garrett trade rumors? And I believe that's I've heard Myles Garrett trade rumors, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it's to Seattle. Yeah. So what have you heard on that front, Tony?
From my understanding, it was some guy on maybe a Reddit thread who supposedly an insider. I don't know if it's for the Browns or the Seahawks or whoever, and he predicted some other trade, Kenny Britt. I think that's what it was, and so they're giving this validity based on that. But that seems so far-fetched. Why would the Browns trade Myles Garrett? He's their best player. You trade him, and what are you left with? I realize they have a lot of young talent on that team, but I don't see the upside of trading a possible defensive player of the year, even if it's out of conference. It just doesn't make any sense. Although it would be a very Browns-like move.
Now, what I'm saying, I've got a lot of people on the live chat saying about AB real quick as I can get back. I'm sorry, Mr. Gummy Richards. I got corrected on that too. But here, a lot of people saying that he will be on the commissioner's exempt list. I'm sure he would be, but the prospect of him getting through and actually playing would scare me. And I just think with his cousin there, I cannot see him doing the regular chicanery that he has in the past. And people brought up some things that he did with the Patriots, but it wasn't flack with the team. He got along real well. I'm talking about the other players. He did not respect Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger may have not respected him in return.
Probably not.
But so that was a big part of it. I think just to close this out real quick, just the fact that he's been working out with Lamar Jackson, there's a definite rapport there. And that goes a long way with Mr. Gummy Richards. So there you go. I don't really think that back to the Myles Garrett rumors, you've got to be the stupidest organization in the world to go ahead and trade a guy like that. Really, with the production that you've gotten out of him, and you've gotten very good production out of him. But you know what I'm going to say is that the Browns are not a smart organization, so I could see it happening. We're getting some live chat from down under, a super chat for Aussie money, $5.99. That would mean Clowney to the Clowns. And
possibly.
And I got to tell you, I would much rather see Jadeveon Clowney in a Browns uniform than Myles Garrett. Now, this has nothing to do with November 14th of last year. It just has everything to do, for me, it has everything to do with the fact that I think Myles Garrett is just a fantastic pass rusher.
Right.
And I would not, that production I would not trade away for Jadeveon Clowney. I just wouldn't do it. Cree says, bad. Do you think that they're tired of his dirty play? Well, you know, they could be. I just don't know. I just don't know what they're thinking. That's he was a number one pick overall. I just don't see them them getting rid of him that easy. And the Browns are always on those rumors.
Right. Well, it could be a contract thing too. I mean, there might be rumblings that what is he, fourth, fifth year now? There might be rumblings that he wants, Aaron Donald money, which he might be worth, but maybe they're not willing to pay him that kind of cash. Maybe that could be something as simple as that. Not his dirty play necessarily, but that's a lot of money to pay anybody, but especially a defensive player. So maybe that's the reason. But I still don't see them doing it. If they do it, it would shock me.
Okay, here's a question. We've already seen some answers out there on the live chat. Not getting a lot of questions, but people proactively brought this up by a comment that I made earlier. Tony, should I ground my children for being loud during my podcasts?
Well, have you done it before?
Well, they got grounded during the schedule release because they were yelling and screaming, and I had to tell them to stop because they were having a fight with each other. And I got to tell you what, being stuck inside with each other the whole time, I understand. But I asked them to stop, and they kept on yelling. And now my son keeps on coming in and tripping over stuff and getting stuff out of the room. I had to text his mom, my wife in the next room, to please have him be quiet, and then he comes back in again and waves and trips.
Well, instead of that, just put him on the show and have him deal with the live chat. That would set him straight. Dennis Sheridan would set him straight. Lance.
Oh, Dennis said he'd ground them for me. Actually, they're really good kids. They're 10 and 12, and in fact, my daughter's gonna be 11 this week. They're really good kids. But go ahead.
You said one of your kids is having a birthday?
Yeah, May 14th, my daughter will be 11.
Oh, okay.
And because of COVID, I can't have a party. So you know what I'm doing? Having a parade for her. Well, I can't say that too loud. I don't want her to hear it, but she doesn't listen to my podcast. Anyways, we're going to anybody that wants to get out of the house and keep within a social distancing guidelines could hop in the car and drive down the street and wave and beep at her while we bring her out. And I think she'll really enjoy it. So we're going to have her standing in the front yard and let all her friends and friends of the family go ahead and beep at her. And if you want to throw candy at dad, you can do that too. So I'm not going to, just because of everybody out there, I'm not going to ground my children. But I need to have stricter podcast rules. And it's tough with being together right now in this time, but it's a chance to get closer to the family too. And I did. So I feel great about that. Ryan Kellerman also has a birthday coming up, big friend of the show, on May 14th. So happy birthday early to you, Ryan. Let's see. Sean says Bad's little mini me's creating chaos. Love it. That's what they're supposed to do. Yeah. So yeah, they're me. I mean, they have my genes, so there's some chaos, and in fact, I'm more worried about that. Lance brings in a question here. Who has the most approved this year? And I could say that on the defensive side of the ball, there's one guy that I think has a lot to prove. I don't know if he needs to prove it with the organization as much as he needs to prove it with the fans, it seems. But I would say none other than number one draft pick out of 2018, number 34, Terrell Edmunds. What do you think, Tony?
Well, as far as defense is concerned, he absolutely has the most to prove, at least to the fans. I'm not sure how the organization feels about him because he started 2 straight years, and there doesn't seem to be anybody threatening to take his spot. So, but definitely the fans. He's definitely the new Bud Dupree of 2020 as far as the fans are concerned, because the guy could do no right. And maybe they're right. I don't know. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how his third year plays out, because if there's ever a player that could use a huge leap in the eyes of the fans, it's Terrell Edmunds.
So I've got some other guys that I think that have something to prove, and this is on the defensive side of the ball, on a very productive defense. But guys that I think have something to prove right now, Stephon Tuitt needs to prove that he could stay healthy. That poor guy has had a lot of bad luck. But when you're looking at another guy, I actually think you guys are going to think I'm crazy for saying this, but I think Devin Bush has a lot to prove this year. And what I thought he had a magical rookie year, I think the arrow is definitely pointing up, but I think he needs to prove that he's the next level guy. And I want to see even a bigger jump from him to see if he could be a defensive superstar. I think that's what he has to prove. Bud Dupree, Snowman mentioned Bud Dupree, that he can do it. He needs to prove that he can do it 2 years in a row. And, Snowman also had a live chat that I did miss, and I want to go ahead and bring that up while it's on my head. Thank you for the $5, Snowman, one of our biggest one of BTSC's biggest sugar daddies. Let's call him that, because always on the live chat, and I really appreciate him. The clowns are the clowns and don't understand football, and I think that's true. Snowman had another comment earlier that I just chuckled at, and I thought it was really funny. He called the Tennessee Titans the Tennessee Tuxedos. I'm not sure what that means, but I'm going to start using it. I think the Tennessee Tuxedos.
It's actually catchy.
Yeah, I like that. And Kathy agrees on the Devin Bush thing, and she already wrote it earlier. He needs to prove that he's a number one pick as well. Back to Mr. Edmonds. Is it a disappointing career if Edmonds ends up playing on par with Ryan Clark? Understanding he's a first-round pick, but I'll take a solid 10-year starter. Here's the thing about Terrell Edmonds. And where Terrell Edmonds is getting all the flack that he gets is the fact, and this is not his fault, but he's getting the flack because he was a number one pick. If he was a number two pick or a number three pick, nobody would have a problem with Terrell Edmonds as much.
Right.
It's the fact that he was a number one pick, and that's what's happening right now. If you look at the defense, he is the weakest link as far as a starter on the defense. However, think about how good that defense was, and we talk about this. We've talked about this on the Stat Geek show the other night, and I'm going to use it even more and more. That means he's the ugliest supermodel. So you have all these. That means he's a good player. But on that defense, he's the one supermodel that isn't as sexy as the others. Right. He does a lot of things that really don't show up in the stat sheet as much, but really, really benefit this team. So I would probably say that that's a guy that needs a little more time. But I think Terrell Edmonds, he probably has a lot to prove more to, like I said, to Steeler Nation than the actual team itself, because I think they like what they have in them. Either that or they're protecting their number one draft pick. Kathy asked, where would he rank among others at his position? Kathy, I'm going to tell you right now, that's a Dave Schofield question. So if he's still in the live chat, I'm sure he's looking it up already. Charlie Stevens, he doesn't think he's good. He gets there late and is the twin of Burns.
Well, I mean, speaking, they only protected him for 2 years, and by his third year, once they decided he wasn't cutting the mustard, so to speak, they benched him. So if they're only going to protect Edmonds for so long, but at this point, it doesn't look like he's a real liability. As you mentioned so many times, Brian, he's just like the weakest link on a really good defense, or he appears to be the weakest link on a really good defense. So maybe he's not as bad as we think that he is.
So let's go to the offense. Who has most to prove on the offensive side of the ball? Let's leave Ben Roethlisberger out of this because we know how much he has to prove, and it's the elbow has to prove. But let's talk about the other players on this team. Is it Alejandro Villanueva, Tony? Could he be one of those guys?
It's hard. It's hard. That's another Dave Schofield, I think, question, because I thought he was shaky the last couple of years, especially against elite pass rushers like Myles Garrett. But according to what I read from a couple people right after the season, he had a better year than we thought. So it's hard to evaluate. But I think he could use a really good bounce back season, at least in terms of perception. And I think Juju is another one that has a lot to prove based on last year and based on the way people are talking about him as having he doesn't seem to be getting the same benefit of the doubt as other people are on that offense because of the quarterback situation. It's almost like people are leaving that out of the equation when it comes to evaluating Juju's 2019 season. So I think he too has a lot to prove.
Have you seen how motivated Juju Smith-Schuster is right now? Just seeing him on Twitter or how he's working out like a madman, because he's heard it and now he's hearing more, all the talk. And this isn't from the Steelers. This is all the chatter around it saying that he might not be picked up for another contract. I find that to be, I find that hard to digest right now, because nobody was complaining about him last year. I mean, before last year. And last year was just not, there were some problems as far as, he had those fumbles. He had the big fumble the year before in the Saints game, and he had the big fumble in the Baltimore game that we referenced earlier. And somebody asked, is he going to fumble? Tanya asked, is he going to fumble away a game again this year? But I kind of think that he's so, he really wants to prove it. And I think he's a guy that wants to be in the 4-1-2 for a long time. So I'm not ready to, are you ready to say that they're done with him? Because I'm not.
I'm not ready to say that. No. I mean, but it's like we talked about last week. It all depends on his price tag. I mean, if he has a great year, if he has a bounce back year in 2020, I mean, we're talking anywhere from 16 to 20 million a year for him. That's a lot. I mean, that's what they paid AB, but are they willing to go down that road again at the receiver position when they have so many other needs that they have to focus on too, as far as contracts, TJ Watt being the chief among them. So I'm not willing to say it because, like I've said a few times, he's the kind of guy that in the past they would automatically sign to a second contract. I mean, he's like you said, the 4-1-2, he's the Steelers ambassador, and he's the kind of guy that I could see playing here for 15 years, like Hines Ward.
Now, here's a guy that I don't think this guy has a lot to prove, and I'm already hearing that this guy does have a lot to prove, but I really think that he wants to prove, and that's James Washington. What kind of jump do you see Washington having from year 2 to year 3, or do you think that he's going to be an odd man out with Chase Claypool coming in?
That's a great question, because I'm actually surprised at the lack of love that he received for his year last year. I thought he really made great strides. What game was that where he bailed? I think it was Mason Rudolph out with 3 exceptional catches, like athletic catches, where he combat catches in that game, and his season as a whole. I thought he really answered a lot of questions based, from his rookie year, which was totally non-existent. So if he can get that kind of leap from his first to his second year and playing with 2 young quarterbacks, what can he do in his third year playing with a Hall of Fame quarterback who supposedly or presumably is going to be back to 100%? So I'm surprised that more people aren't high on him, because I really am. I don't know why it feels like he is the odd man out, because, Juju's in there, and they drafted Deontay Johnson, who had a great year. And of course, Chase Claypool's the latest rookie, and people are automatically going to love him until he gets on the field. So it does feel like he's the odd man out, but I'm surprised that he's not getting more love, because I think he played a lot better than people were remembering in 2019.
And as you can see, Matty thinks that he won't get a lot of time and not get a lot of opportunities, with Deontay and Claypool getting a lot of attention and Juju getting those balls too. Because remember, Ben's going to jump back in, and he's going to lean on Juju. because that's what he does. He finds a guy to lean on. Ben's going to throw a lot of balls to Ryan Switzer too, because Ben throws balls to Ryan Switzer.
Right.
And that's what will happen. So look, I'm not a Ryan Switzer homer. I'm just saying that the organization seems to value him so much more because maybe Ben values him so much more, but maybe the organization does too. Values him more than we do in Steeler Nation. So you just never know. Here's my last question here that I'm going to go ahead and ask. And if we're going to wrap up soon, so if anybody has any more questions, go ahead and throw them in. We all know that James Conner needs to prove that he can stay healthy. But what's a number of games that you need to get out of James Conner this year to have everybody off of his back?
Well, I'm going to say typical. He's a running back, and he's a workhorse type running back. He's a hard-nosed runner. I'm going to say if you get 13 or 14 games out of him, I think that's reasonable considering the position he plays.
Yeah, I'm hoping. I think he needs to get 14, at least 14, because I got to tell you, I mean, there might be a situation where he doesn't have to play in week 17, and that would be awesome. That might change with the number of games, but I really think 14. But when you look at that number, I want you to look more. We can't count half games in there, though, too. Because if he goes out in the second quarter of a game, you can't count that game at all.
That's absolutely correct.
So I really think that I know he has a lot to prove to stay healthy. I don't think he has a lot to prove as a runner, though. So
no.
Thanks to Dave Shipley, $2 as a super sticker. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And he also says that 14. Robert says 14. Joey Jr. wants 16. There you go. And Ryan Kellerman says 14, but it's not going to be not happening. So there you go. It's health. But will you be? I mean, I'm going to ask the live chat. Will you be off his back if he gives you 14 plus games of health this year, and he gains over 1,000 yards, comes close to double digits in touchdowns? There you go. I mean, that could be a possibility, but it's hard to believe until you see it. So that remains to be seen. There's another guy we talk about re-signing, and we're saying yes. Okay, people will be, because that's all they want from James Conner. They, you know what, Logan, I was going to mention this next because I was going to re-mention the fact that we talked about Juju, but Logan asked what's off his back, want us to re-sign him. It's going to be hard to re-sign all those guys, because you got to think,
right,
even though the contract's not up in the same year because TJ Watt gets an extra year, but he was drafted in that same year, you got to start thinking about throwing money his way, and he's a definite sign. And you had Juju, Cam Sutton, and James Conner in that same class. So one of them is going to be gone. But a lot of people are, especially when we saw this leading up to the draft, when everybody wanted J.K. Dobbins or any of those other players, whether it be Swift, whether it be Akers, when they wanted a running back picked early. And it was, did they want that because he can't stay healthy or because they thought he sucked? And I think most of it was because he couldn't stay healthy. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, are you going to be more protective of him and talk more glowingly of him if he is healthier? And that's the thing. That's what the question is. But with that being said, we're getting ready to get to the 1 hour mark. So I really appreciate everybody coming in. Thank you so much. We can't do this without you in the live chat tonight. And as always, you're the heart and soul of this show, so we really appreciate it. Tony, thank you so much for coming in. Your final thoughts?
Oh, I just wanted to echo your sentiments. I really enjoyed the live chat tonight. They really brought it tonight. They were a lot of fun. So it was a really fun and spirited show. So thanks a bunch.
Kathy Ford, we're not supposed to have favorites. Kathy's a favorite. She's Kansas Kathy. giving us $2 in the live chat for the party fund. I really appreciate it. We're gonna have a great party once COVID ends and everybody's hopefully back to their normal. And remember, speaking of COVID-19, please stay safe out there. Please mentally safe, physically safe. We value you all and thank you for all much you do. We're going to continue to get through this together as well. Kathy, I gotta bring up Kathy again. She says when she wins the HDTV sweepstakes pit house BTSC party, that's great, but Mrs. Bad has put in every single day to win that house. so I hope you, if our family doesn't win it, I hope you win it. That house looks just awesome. And I'm thinking, man, I could get season tickets and I'd have a house in Pittsburgh. And I'd probably want to move to Pittsburgh because I got to get back to Western PA sometime in my life. And I'd love to be back there. But if you haven't had a chance to see the HGTV house that they're giving away, it looks really cool. My wife's like, the only thing I don't like is the artwork. I'm like, we could get rid of artwork. Plus, it's a free, awesome house. I don't care about artwork. But that'd be awesome. So Tony, you could put in for that too, and then that could be our BTSC party house as well. So
Party Central.
But anyways, Tony, thank you so much.
Thank you,
guys. We will see you next week. You'll see me next on the Steeler preview with one Deputy Dave Schofield and the editor, the great Jefferson Hartman. So we will be on Thursday evening. You'll see Tony again, brunch with Tony, when he might have something yummy on the show. Or maybe Tony does recipes. That'll be great. So this was all Lance's idea, and I think it's hilarious. Awesome. So with that being said, thanks for hanging out with us on, I was going to say The Hangover, but on Steeler Q&A. And remember, to quote the great Rowdy Roddy Piper, just when you think you know all the answers,
we keep changing the questions.
Good night, my friends. We'll see you.